Alright, I'm Chris Savold alongside John Schooner. This is Fantasy Football Formula, bringing you the best fantasy advice this side of the Mississippi. Now, John, what were some of the highlights of Week 2? A lot of injuries, but there are also a lot of breakout performances.
I think the main thing you want to look at is injuries. I think Adrian Peterson being the biggest one, that's obviously a big issue for the Vikings. Danny Woodhead for the Chargers. I think that's going to be this is going to be really important for guys like Antonio Gates, Melvin Gordon, and Travis Benjamin. And then I think the Browns quarterback situation also has kind of a low-key fantasy impact, because we look at maybe how the increase in touches for Isaiah Crowell and maybe the drop in value for Corey Coleman, Josh Gordon, and Duke Johnson.
Yeah, and we saw Melvin Gordon have a really good Week 1, and a lot of people tried to sell high on them. And if they did, I'm sure they're regretting it now, because Gordon had 17 points over the past 2 weeks, and now he is the entire workload of the San Diego backs. He's going to be much better in PPR as a sleepy PPR threat. He's right now the number 4 running back behind Williams, Forte, and Anderson, and I think he'd creep into my top 15.
I have Melvin Gordon in my top 15. I think Melvin Gordon is going to get a lot of work. The only thing I worry about with Melvin Gordon is, while I think he will see work in the passing game, I don't think he's going to be that successful in the passing game just because he doesn't have breakaway speed. But I think he's going to be big, especially considering how well the Chargers' offense is working right now. But the thing to look for is if the Chargers start choking, as they've been known to do in the past, they could stop running late in games. And I think that's what Melvin Gordon's role is pounding the defense and wearing out the defensive line, while they used to use Danny Woodhead in the games when they were down. I think it's going to be difficult for Melvin Gordon to fill Danny Woodhead's value for when the Chargers are down in the game.
Honestly, from my opinion with Adrian Peterson, I think that is a blessing in disguise for Peterson owners. Peterson has absolutely sucked this year. Out of all running backs, he grades very poorly on Pro Football Focus, and he's, I think I saw a statistic that he's the lowest yards per carry among running backs at 30 carries ever, or at least in this season. Peterson, if you own him, you'd be continuing to start him until probably Week 6, and that's just a recipe for a disaster. At that point, you're going to be screwed. But this allows Peterson owners to play guys on their bench and take a chance with guys on the waiver wire. And as a Todd Gurley owner, obviously you don't want Todd Gurley to get hurt, but if he got injured, it would force you to play someone off your bench.
I think the thing with Adrian Peterson right now is owners just want to start him, but I think that the problem is that's going on right now is just Adrian Peterson just isn't playing well. He's not averaging any yards. He's not even getting into the end zone. I think maybe this injury will give him some time to revamp himself, and then when he comes back, he'll be the Adrian Peterson we saw at the end of last year when he was doing so well. But I think it's hard for owners to just give up on Adrian Peterson because he was everyone's first-round pick who got him.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think it's good for owners. We'll see what happens with Adrian Peterson and the Vikings backfield.
Yeah, and obviously because of all these injuries, there are a lot of waiver ads. Handcuffs are obviously a huge part of fantasy football, and you have Stewart going down, you have Arian Foster going down, you have the Vikings backfield, who's going to step up there, you have Ezekiel Elliott fumbling, Alfred Morris getting the carries from that point on, you have Devontae Booker handcuffed to C.J. Anderson having 5 carries last week. There's a lot to think about. We have Dwayne Washington, one of my favorites, in Detroit, and I think he's going to get the bulk of the carries. Theo Riddick is just not a rushing back, and I think there's a solid chance that he could be a breakout performer in the coming weeks.
I agree with Dwayne Washington, and I actually really like him. I'm going to look to pick him up in my leagues because I think that he's the running back that the Lions need. He's a lot like what Joique Bell produced earlier. He's not just a pass-catching back like Theo Riddick and Amir Abdullah, and I think that's what the Lions needed. The Lions actually have a pretty good offense right now, and I think if they could get a running back that they could feed the ball to 15 times a game and get the goal line touchdowns, I think that would be really big for the Lions. I think Dwayne Washington is what they were looking for.
Yeah, and I think other handcuffs of note would be Fozzie Whittaker in Carolina, who performed pretty well. Obviously, you saw him last week. He had a pretty good yards per carry after Jonathan Stewart went down. And I think, where would he rank for your handcuff running backs this week, John? He had 11 points and 100 yards on 16 carries, but also a fumble.
Whittaker is the top running back you want to pick up this week. I think he's the top running back. I think he's the top waiver ad in general. I think if you have the top waiver pick, you want Fozzie Whittaker. I think he could put up running back 2 stats this week in a really successful Panthers offense. And knowing Jonathan Stewart, and now that we know that Fozzie Whittaker is going to be the starter, the Panthers released a statement today saying that he will start this weekend. I think if Fozzie Whittaker can get Jonathan Stewart workload, he could be just as good as Jonathan Stewart was. I think you really want him, and if you're shallow at running back, I think he's a startable option in all formats this week.
Yeah, and also Vikings backfield, I'd stay away from that. One backfield I would like to one backfield that I would like to invest in a little bit would be Kenyon Drake for the Dolphins. I think if you're a PPR league, he's a must-own running back at this point. But also in standard scoring leagues, he's very talented.
Yes.
Jay Ajayi absolutely sucks. The coaches hate him. I hate him. You just really can't trust him, and I think Kenyon Drake is definitely the most upside of that backfield.
I agree. I think Kenyon Drake is going to carry the workload for the Dolphins this weekend. Jay Ajayi, they tried him out at the end of last year, and clearly they just didn't like him. He was set up to be the bell cow running back this year, and people actually wanted him in drafts. But then they went off and got Arian Foster, and now Jay Ajayi just was left for dead. And now Arian Foster's out, and I can't envision Jay Ajayi getting 20 carries this weekend.
No, I can't either.
I can envision Kenyon Drake getting 15 carries this weekend, but Jay Ajayi they just don't like him in Miami. I don't want to say it's like Lamar Miller because I think the Dolphins liked him. They just didn't utilize him.
Lamar Miller, though, he's a good running back.
He is. And I think Kenyon Drake is a good running back, too. I don't think Jay Ajayi is a good running back. I just don't think he's a good running back.
Yeah, and that's about it for waiver ads. There are a few other receivers. If Travis Benjamin isn't owned in your league, pick him up. Josh Doxson, I think, is very interesting. He was targeted very, very often in the red zone. Also had 57 yards on one completion or one reception. I think he's not a must-add, but he is very, very talented. In some 12-team leagues, I'd definitely pick him up. As a DC fan, I don't want to pick him up because I don't want to seem a little bit too Homer-esque. Also, for over-unders, John, first off, we have Melvin Gordon. I'm going to name a few running backs. You tell me if you like Melvin Gordon more or over or less under. All right, John. First off, C.J. Anderson.
Under. C.J. Anderson is a top 5 running back in my mind right now.
C.J. Anderson, I would not say top 5, but I would definitely say top 10.
With Adrian Peterson out, I would say top 5. I have him at RB6 right now.
Yeah, I think that my top 5 running backs, Bell 1, Miller 2, Bell 1, David Johnson 2, then at 3, that's where it gets kind of tricky. I think you just have to deal with not caring about busts too much, but also not too heavily weighing a fast start. Last week, Chris Johnson, of all people, had 11 points. He's not going to be too great, is he?
I think the one thing to keep in mind for anybody who owns Cardinals players, in Bruce Arians' offense, they put up a lot of points. So if they've scored 40 points by the third quarter, they're all coming out. Carson Palmer came out after the third quarter for Drew Stanton. David Johnson came out basically after the second quarter for Chris Johnson. It's just what's going to happen. Bruce Arians is a good coach. He knows what to do. and he's not trying to help out you fantasy owners. He's just trying to win football games. And I think that's the one thing. I think for you don't have to worry about it with David Johnson, Carson Palmer, Larry Fitzgerald, but that's the one thing to keep in mind with guys like John Brown and Michael Floyd.
Yeah, and then also, okay, number 2, John, let's go with DeMarco Murray.
Melvin Gordon, easily.
I would definitely not say easily. Murray has the most receptions out of all running backs right now.
I wouldn't say easily.
He has 56 receiving yards, 89 rushing yards, and then also he has how many touchdowns, John?
I think he has 2.
2 touchdowns.
I take back my statement of easily because I have Melvin Gordon and DeMarco Murray right next to each other at 12 and 13 right now.
Yeah. I think I'd go Murray. But let's see. We have Melvin Gordon or Duke Johnson.
Melvin Gordon, no question. That's an easy one.
Melvin Gordon, Jeremy Hill.
Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, Jeremy Hill struggled. That's
Jeremy Hill. I can see a turnaround for Jeremy Hill, but I just don't think he's going to be even close. I think Melvin Gordon could has the ceiling of a
Melvin Gordon
RB1.
or Carlos Hyde.
Melvin Gordon.
I think I would go Gordon, but then Hyde I think is a little bit closer. He put up 21 points in his first week.
I think Hyde is
3 in his second week. I think I would go Gordon just because of the workload. Gordon, I think, definitely could be a top 10 running back possibly for me. Now, Todd Gurley. This is a tough one. Todd Gurley or Ezekiel Elliott?
Ezekiel Elliott right now.
I would go Elliott as well. Todd Gurley or David Johnson?
I would go David Johnson, definitely.
Todd Gurley or Devonta Freeman.
I would still go Todd Gurley.
I think I would too. Gurley, it's very, very worrisome as an owner.
And it's not him. That's the thing that you don't like. It's not his fault. It's his team. And I think that's the thing you have to keep in mind with Todd Gurley is he's still very talented and he might still put up really good numbers, but it's just going to be hard to get him the ball. It's going to be hard.
I agree with that.
I think they can get him the ball, but they're going to be losing so many games. I think you want to look towards guys like David Johnson, Lamar Miller, Le'Veon Bell, guys who are going to carry the more workload because they're going to be winning. I think Le'Veon Bell, easily number 1 running back in fantasy. If you could trade Todd Gurley for Le'Veon Bell, I don't think you could do it right now, but considering there's one more game on the suspension, you could try. But Le'Veon Bell is going to be amazing. If D'Angelo Williams can put up those numbers in that offense, if you put the best running back in the league behind that offense, he's going to be amazing.
So, AJ Green now. AJ Green versus Mike Evans. I go Green easily.
I go Green.
AJ Green or DeAndre Hopkins.
I'm going to go DeAndre Hopkins.
I'm going to go Green.
I'm going to go DeAndre Hopkins because Brock Osweiler has proven that he can still get DeAndre Hopkins the ball, and because Will Fuller has performed so well, it's opening up more for DeAndre Hopkins, and so is Lamar Miller. DeAndre Hopkins has been pretty good so far considering how difficult it's been with double coverage and everything. I think DeAndre Hopkins is still a top 5 wide receiver.
Now, Hopkins, I agree, top 5 wide receiver. But I think AJ Green just has more upside. I'm going to go with Green on this one. Hopkins, obviously very talented and in an explosive offense.
I just think the problem, and it's very similar to Houston, but I think there's so many mouths to feed in Cincinnati, and it's just going to get worse in a couple weeks when Tyler Eifert comes back.
All right, so now we're to the Redskins portion, and cover your ears, children, because I am pretty disappointed about the Redskins' Week 2 performance. First off, this team's talented. There's no questioning about that. Definitely, if you look at teams just based off of talent and no coaching involved, the Redskins would be a top 15, arguably a top 10 team in the NFL. But Jay Gruden and Sean McVay somehow managed to screw everything up against the Steelers, maybe the best team in the NFL, but the Dallas Cowboys, a rivalry game against a rookie quarterback and against a running back you let go because you believed in Matt Jones, but ended up scoring the winning touchdown against you. That is pathetic. Jay Gruden ran I think, 3 or 4 fade routes to Josh Doctson in the end zone, and it clearly was not working. Right there is when the game was decided. Also was decided when Kirk Cousins couldn't throw the ball 30 yards to a receiver. When he tried to target a receiver 30 yards down the field, whether it's Desean Jackson for a wide-open 60-yard touchdown or Jameson Crowder coming across the field, he threw it 40 yards. He overthrew so many wide-open receivers, it was absolutely pathetic. He waited too long in the pocket. In fact, he's better under pressure when he's to force throws than he is when he's not under pressure. When he's that much time and no one's open, you run it. You don't just sit there and wait and wait and wait. If no one's getting open, just give up. If you look at Pro Football Focus also, number 1 cornerback in the NFL, Josh Norman. All you idiots on Facebook, shut up. Josh Norman is the best cornerback in the NFL. So what if he wasn't guarding Dez Bryant or Antonio Brown and follow him around? Richard Sherman doesn't do that either. And you know what? He was targeted 4 times when he was covering Bryant and Brown. That doesn't mean that he wasn't covering them for over half the game in both seasons.
I think you can't blame Josh Norman, but Patrick Pearson is the best cornerback in the NFL.
I agree with that because he's a lockdown corner that follows people around. That's impressive.
Patrick Pearson follows people around and makes plays.
Yes.
He makes plays.
But as I was getting to...
He has the hands of a receiver, Patrick Pearson.
As I was getting to, Norman was targeted 4 times when covering Dez Bryant and Antonio Brown. The results of that play, pass deflection, pass deflection, pass deflection, pass deflection. He is absolutely lockdown cornerback, and if the Redskins wanted to utilize him in that way, he could be the best cornerback in the NFL. With that said, I'm not done. With that said, the Redskins are not letting that happen. They're putting Bashaud Breeland, who's a good corner, I still believe, on Bryant and Antonio Brown, 2 of the best receivers in the NFL, and he's getting absolutely toasted. He can't save it.
That's Jay Gruden's fault.
And it is Jay Gruden's fault.
If you spent all that money for Josh Norman, why wouldn't you use him? Because
they are utilizing him.
They are utilizing him, but you have to. These 2 games were a test for the Redskins. They were, and they completely failed. And you face 2 of the best receivers in the league, and they're 2 very different receivers. And watching Bashaud Breeland just get toasted by them each and every route, it just can't happen. Antonio Brown struggled this week. He was not all that good against the Bengals' mediocre secondary.
The Bengals have a good secondary.
Yes, but they don't have a lockdown corner like Josh Norman. And it just shows you Bashaud Breeland is a decent cornerback. He's a good number 2 corner. But if you have Josh Norman, you must utilize him. He must cover Odell Beckham this weekend. He cannot cover Victor Cruz or Sterling Shepard. The Giants are going to do something to throw them off. They're going to put Odell Beckham in the slot.
Odell Beckham sucks.
They're going to put him on the left side, on the right side. They're going to do everything to mess with them. The Redskins must adapt. If they're going to win on Sunday, they have to utilize Josh Norman to stop Odell Beckham.
I 100% agree with that. And I think the Redskins team overall, they're performing pretty well individually. Kerrigan's performed well. Trent Murphy had 2 sacks last week. Will Compton, the number 8 ranked middle linebacker in Pro Football Focus, he's playing so well. It's very impressive. 22 tackles. Then Mason Foster leads the league in tackles. We have 2 guys in the top 25 or in the top 5 for tackles in the NFL. Hall's playing decent. David Bruton playing so bad. In the run, I think it was against this week, there is a drag route over the middle. Receiver caught it, and I think it was Deshaun Phillips in coverage, and coming from about the 20-yard line. The receiver took it across the field. Bruton took the worst angle I've ever seen someone take. Like, high school football players could have taken a better angle. And it was a touchdown. And I think in order for a team to have a strong secondary, run defense is extremely important, or just tackling after the catch. Because if you can't tackle after the catch, you're going to suck. But also, the tackles performed really, really well. Morgan Moses and Trent Williams are both playing great. Trent Williams is at 6 in the according to Pro Football Focus. Morgan Moses at top 22, so both of them are performing really well. Interior, Sheriff is playing decent. Laval not great, and Corey Lichtensteiger, I still think is undersized. He makes so many mental mistakes. Whether it's false starts, there was one that basically killed the Redskins' drive after they got to the 50-yard line with 18 seconds left. needless to say, there need to be changes in Washington, and I think it starts with the coaching staff. And I think in order for the Redskins to be a playoff team, they need a regime change.
I think after all of those negatives, I think we can look at one thing and say that Matt Jones did perform a lot better this weekend. He was not great, but he broke off that nice touchdown run. I think Matt Jones, you can be encouraged by this performance, but I still think that Matt Jones still needs work, and he needs to figure out his role as an NFL running back. I think they're going to have to give him the ball more this weekend. The Giants don't have a good run defense. They don't have a good defense. I think this is a must-win for the Redskins this weekend against the Giants. They have to win. They have to utilize their team. They still have a chance of making the playoffs because we know the NFC East isn't good.
Yeah.
I think they have a chance.
The Giants are 2-0 right now. Redskins are 0-2. If we can win against the Giants, that puts us one game behind them. I think that's not a terrible position.
I agree. I think this is a very doable situation for the Redskins if you win this week. But 0-3, teams just don't win when they're 0-3. They don't win their divisions when they start 0-3. I think the Redskins' worst season in recent history was 2013 when they went 0-3.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that Kirk Cousins comes through and leads this team to a big victory this weekend. Because I think the Giants are 2-0, but they just haven't been that great. Their passing game is good. But the Redskins need to stop that. They need to use Josh Norman to eliminate Odell Beckham this weekend. Big win if they can win this weekend for the Redskins.
I think keys of the game. Safeties perform decent. Kirk Cousins actually plays well. Give Matt Jones the ball. Josh Norman covers Odell Beckham. From Chris Savold and John Schooner, this is Fantasy Football Formula. See ya!
Fans that waited, the niggas hated, dated. Look, mama, we made it. Your son out in Barbados. Cheese, eggs, and potatoes. Smoke weed on the beach is my mind working like Play-Doh.